Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Max Group video. My name is Isa. I am one of the therapists here at Cache Valley Counseling. And today's Max Group is going to be a fairly quick one, but I just wanted to review with all of you a little bit about attachment styles. Attachment is a important, just honestly universal kind of experience for people, for humans. Everybody on Earth needs to feel and be attached to other humans for their safety, for survival, for well-being. It's a just an innate human need, and obviously what attachment looks like can be very different depending on the person or the culture and a whole lot of different things, depending on what kind of a relationship you're in, right? Whether this is a parent-child relationship or a friendship or a romantic relationship, attachment can look very, very different according to different things. But typically speaking, they're in the literature and research on attachment, which was started by a researcher named John Bowlby. He was able to observe that there's a few kind of common types or styles or patterns of attachment that most people kind of fit into, and that these styles of attachment, they're things that develop usually starting as when we are children, even in infants, in fact, and just it sort of is a pattern that emerges based off of how we as children, as little babies, um, learn to kind of perceive the world depending on how responsive and caring and sensitive our primary caregivers were to us and our needs, right? So if as a little baby you had parents who came to you when you cried and who attempted to meet your needs, whether that was, feeding you or changing your diaper or soothing you, comforting you, whatever that, looks like. If you had a parent who's generally sensitive and generally um responsive to your needs, then most likely children who have responsive parents or around a generally responsive environment can develop healthier attachments than those who do not. And when it's not healthy or when it's less healthy, it can look like a lot of different things. There's what, and basically we would differentiate these between secure and insecure types of attachment. And the insecure, there's kind of multiple types, and we're going to go over some of that. And yeah, so it's just, and attachment styles are not set in stone. Just because you maybe have an anxious or insecure attachment as a child doesn't mean that that can't improve. Typically also can look very different across different relationships. But we're just going to kind of review things a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can share the screen for a second, because there's a little flyer that I would like to show you. Hopefully this will work. Let's see. Okay. Okay, awesome. So I wonder if, hold on, hopefully I can zoom in or you guys can see this well enough. Let's see. Oh, that might be a little too close. Okay. So, all right, this is a flyer that some colleagues of mine created in one of my MFT courses, and it just kind of goes over what attachment is and a little bit about these styles, right? So, just some of the things I already talked about with these points. Number one, we as humans have an innate desire to connect with and depend on others. So again, there's this concept, this idea that we need to attach to people to be successful in life and to be okay and to be healthy. Often in our westernized culture, we have a lot of emphasis on independence. And that is a value we hold, that we want to be independent, that we want to be able to take care of ourselves, not rely on other people, which, is normal, is fair to kind of think that way. However, it is, it's also not entirely realistic and not entirely healthy if that is all that if we are only independent and we don't have connections to people, that's not healthy and that's not sustainable. So again, we need to be able to connect with others emotionally, as well as, just logistically or financially. We do depend on others and share with other people in our lives, right? So then point number 2 is that self-confidence and autonomy are strengthened by secure dependency. So this is a very interesting point because when you look at these 4 attachment styles, right? So there's the secure, anxious, avoidant, and fearful. When you're in the secure type of attachment, again, what allows you to be secure is the safety of knowing that your needs are going to be met and people will be there for you. And so it's kind of counterintuitive to this maybe traditional how would I say, traditional advice that we are given that a child who is too coddled or spoiled can't, what's the word, manage on their own as an adult, right? That like if things are too easy for you, you're never going to learn. And so that somehow like hardship and challenge and struggle and suffering is what like allows a person to become competent. And there is a sweet spot when it related to this, that like never having any kind of challenges probably isn't going to help you to grow and develop and be, competent as an adult and to be secure. But you also can't always be, again, alone and disconnected. And especially if you're, functioning out of a place of fear, that is not conducive to growth, and that is not conducive to security or to competence. And so, again, being able to be autonomous and have success in that and to have self-confidence relies on security. It relies on feeling safe. It relies on this ability to be connected to others. So again, there's this kind of a little bit of a counterintuitiveness, but successful independence can only happen when you have secure network and base and foundation of, social connection first. So that's a very, interesting point as well. Point number 3, safe havens are created through attachment figures that can be depended on. So again, like, when attachment styles were being, the idea of attachment styles were being developed in research, it was observed that little toddlers who could successfully go out and like play with toys and interact with other kids are the toddlers who knew their parents were going to be there when they turned around to look. Oh, is mom still sitting on the bench on the park? Okay, she is. Cool. I can still play and I can feel safe and secure. Right. And so this idea that if there are attachment figures who are safe and who are there for you and dependable, then you can feel safe and you can, again, be autonomous. So same sort of idea, right? Point number 4, attachment allows for a secure base to be offered. And again, so a lot of these points are similar to each other, that the security comes from the fact that you are connected to someone, that you're attached, that you're not lost, you're not alone. And that helps, you to function better overall, right? Number 5, sharing your own and responding to emotional bids builds bonds. Sorry, that's a little bit of a tongue twister there. So emotional bids is this idea that when a person wants to connect to someone else in any capacity, they will offer an emotional bid. That could be something like, a friend texting another friend saying, "Hey, do you want to hang out tonight?" That's a bid. That's them putting it out there like, "Hey, I want to spend time with you, connect with you, do something with you." It can be, like an invitation to hang out. It can be something as simple as saying like, "Oh, how's it going? How's your day?" It can be sending someone a funny video, or it's anything that we do to try to interact with other people, connect with other people. And so when we are sharing these bids with people, or when we are trying, um, when we are initiating bids, but also when we are aware of other people's bids and responding to them, that is how we build connection. That is how we build relationships. That is true for parents and children. It's true for romantic partners. It's true for in friendships. Like for a baby and a parent, the baby's bids are that it's going to cry, it's going to need you, it's going to do all these things. Obviously, the baby is far more dependent on the parent than the other way around initially. But as that child grows older, parents also have bids for their children where they like come in and say like, "Hey, what are you doing? And let me, show me what book you're reading." Parents will come in and also try to connect with their child, and the child then responds back, and that builds a bond. So, responding to and initiating bids for emotional connection is super important as a necessary component of building a relationship. Number 6, uncertainty and fear trigger needs of attachment. So when we are afraid of being alone, when we're afraid of being rejected, when, those things, anything that feels threatening to our safety and security in a relationship, that can trigger us, that can cause us to lash out, that can cause us to react defensively or to, excuse me, have problems in our relationships, because they're speaking directly to this attachment need to be connected. And if that need is not being met, if we are struggling with that, then um, then we're going to try to do whatever we can to get that need met and to get that attachment met. And sometimes we do this in maladaptive or unhealthy ways. I, wonder if any of you have ever heard of, maybe a teenager who's acting out, doing unhealthy things or unsafe things, and people might describe this person as being attention seeking, right? And attention seeking is such an interesting thing because we typically label this as a bad thing. Like, oh, if you're an attention seeker, you're an attention hog, like you just want to be the center of attention. And, and we maybe label a person as needy or, bad in some way for wanting attention or trying to seek out attention, in, especially if they're doing it in unhealthy ways. But that to me begs the question of, why do they feel like they need to seek your attention or seek anyone's attention? Why do they feel the need to maybe create chaos or a crisis to get attention? And to me, that speaks to this idea that, well, maybe they're just not generally consistently getting attention in a way that is healthy and necessary for them to thrive. And so when a person's acting out or attention seeking, that really does come from a natural place of, we need to be connected to be okay. And so that shouldn't be an automatically villainized or pathologized thing, because if someone's not getting the attention they need and acting out, maybe, or a good way to respond to that person would be to give them attention, and not just because they're acting out, but to go and be with that person and sit with that person and get to know them. And what are their fears? What are their dreams? What are their desires? What are their interests? This definitely works, again, with children and parents. This works with your friendships or, lovers, partners, right? So like, if you are struggling, go and give that person attention. Go and see, try to understand what they need, what they want, and try to meet those needs. And you will, and, not, obviously this, I'm saying this in a much more maybe oversimplified way. Sometimes context can be complicated, but generally speaking, if a person can feel attached and seen and understood, a lot of those maybe difficult behaviors or relationship issues might decrease, or be minimized, because suddenly they are feeling seen and connected, and that is good and lovely and healthy and necessary, right? Okay, so number 7, how distress from separate hold on, distress from separation tends to occur when and can be predicted. Sorry, the sentence is a little, okay, yes. How distress from separation tends to occur can be predicted and make sense. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, so it's just this idea that it, all behavior makes sense in context, right? So when you are distressed because you're being disconnected from someone, you're feeling separated, that makes sense. That makes sense to the fact that we need people. So like when you have a little baby, again, a toddler who's old enough to recognize the faces of their parents or immediate family members, and suddenly they get, thrust into the arms of a stranger, and they look at that person and they cry, they have this kind of stranger danger reflex. That's normal, because they're like, wait, where is my, attachment figure? Where's my, mother, father, whomever, that I know and I feel secure with? And it's predictable and it's justified, and it makes sense that we feel distress when we are separated from our attachment figures. And obviously, like, there is ways that are more developmentally appropriate than others, right? So it's normal for kids to cry when they're separated from their parents, in a nursery or school or something like that. Obviously, when you're an adult, maybe you have a greater tolerance and greater capacity to be separated from people you love, at least temporarily, right? Like, okay, well, I have to go to work and you have to go to school, and that's okay. And we can handle being away from each other for a few hours or even several days if we have to go on a trip, or, like, we can handle that to a degree because we have a larger window of tolerance. But we couldn't handle it if it was, an overwhelming amount of time, right? Like if you're like, oh, well, if I'm not gonna see this person that I love for months and months, that might be more difficult and cause distress, if, in the same way that it would for a child to be separated from their parents for a few hours, right? So again, those things are predictable and make sense, and we can work around, well, what is, you know, a normal amount of distress versus not, and how do we improve that feeling of security in order to minimize that distress when separation needs to happen in normal, and justifiable ways or lengths of time, essentially. Then number 8, anxiety and avoidance tends to be the two main reactions to negative attachment responses. So if you'll see the two little kind of pink bubbles over here that describe anxious and avoidant attachment styles, there are essentially the two main types of insecure. And so typically an anxious attachment is someone who will try to make up for this perceived lack of connection by pursuing it, right? They're going to be anxious. They're going to be trying to pursue that. They're probably going to be, making a lot of behaviors to get people to be around them, like, talking to them all the time, or initiating, hanging out, or doing things, or especially in romantic relationships, it might be someone who just needs to be connected and doing things all the time, and to not feel connected is very stressful. And so then they double down on their pursuing efforts because they feel anxious, and they feel like, if I let go of this, if I don't pursue, if I don't do these things, this person's going to forget about me. This person's not going to be there for me. So I have to do this so I can remain relevant and remain in their lives. And so that's, just this one, or this first type of reaction to this perceived distance is, I need to do everything I can to not have that distance and to cling on to these secure, or attachment figures, because I'm afraid of losing them. And if I let go, I'm going to lose them. Right. So that's a little bit of what an anxiously attached person is going to do. Avoidant attachment is, again, also a response to the same sort of thing of, like, when you're not getting your needs met, when you're not securely attached because people have not consistently been there for you. But instead of being anxious, the avoidant person will kind of, the way that they deal with this distress is to, as essentially, instead of clinging to attachment and trying to keep it, they push attachment away and avoid, because there's this almost like this fear of getting hurt. So therefore they're like, well, if I don't even get close to people, then I can't be hurt, right? It's kind of like, I'm going to push you away before you can push me away. I'm going to reject you before you can reject me. And so people who are avoidant tend to, again, avoid. They tend to avoid social interactions. They might cancel on plans a lot. They might, if you're in a relationship with a romantic partner and there's a difficult conversation that needs to happen and they don't want to get hurt, or they don't want a fight to happen, they don't want conflict to happen, they might avoid talking about that, because they're like, I don't want to create an issue. I don't want to get hurt. I'm just going to push that away before negative consequences can come on to me, right? So that's typically what an avoidant person or an avoidant attachment style will tend to do, right? And then number 9, attachment is formed through working models of self and other. A model of self and other is essentially just this description of what we think about ourselves and what we think about other people, right? So typically, again, an anxious person will have maybe some more negative views of oneself, but positive views of others. And so they want to be with others, and they fear that people won't value them very highly. An avoidant person might have the opposite, where maybe they do value themselves to some degree, but they don't trust other people. And so then, there's a little bit of a mismatch there as well. And so if you can have models of self that are viewing yourself and others as good and trusting and reliable and worthy of love, then that is the best combination of being able to reach out to other people, to connect with other people, and also have an appropriate amount of distance or boundaries when necessary, and to have this be a balance between dependence and independence, right? We call this interdependence. That is the goal. That is ideal. Also, really quick, the last little bubble there, the fearful bubble, or another word that has been used in the past is disorganized as an attachment style. A fearful or disorganized attachment is really just a combination of avoidant and anxious. And it's just considered a little bit worse because you do both of those things. You pursue really intensely and then you avoid really intensely. And it's just a mixture of both things. And you're just inconsistent because you're so overwhelmed and so afraid that at one moment you're doing all the stuff to keep people near you, and then when they come close, you reject them. And it's just this kind of back and forth. There's not really a consistent pattern, because the level of anxiety or fear of being alone and of not having this attachment is so intense that you're kind of all over the place in your reactions to fear of being alone, essentially. Um, and then again, number 10, experiencing loss and isolation can be traumatizing moments that affect attachment. So, again, you can have attachment. Attachment is something that it's not so fleeting that it, changes day by day, but it's also not so set in stone that you will never be able to have improvement or change. It's something that does affect us, but can be malleable as well. So typically most people have a generalized attachment style of how they generally respond in relationships, but you can also very much have different attachment styles based on different relationships. Like you can be securely attached with your parents or your friends, but maybe anxiously attached with a romantic partner. Because in romantic relationships specifically, maybe you haven't ever experienced a secure base to feel comfortable in. And so then there you experience that anxiety, right? Or, vice versa. You can have different types, you can experience different type attachment styles in different relationships, just depending on what those relationships do for you and offer you. And do you feel secure in those relationships or do you not? So then here at the bottom of this handout, there's this link, which anyone, maybe you guys can screenshot or copy. And it's basically there's an attachment style quiz that people can take. And I believe it includes the question, it includes also kind of gives you results, not just of your general attachment style, but your attachment styles for your like parental figures and potential like romantic figures or friends. And like it just kind of separates things, asks you questions about different types of relationships in order to kind of estimate your attachment style in different across different relationships. So that's really cool, as a resource as well, if anyone would like to do that. So anyway, that's pretty much it for today. It's nothing crazy. It was just talking a little bit about this attachment thing, because when we are in therapy and we are in our relationships, it's good to be aware of what is our attachment style, how do we show up in relationships, what do we normally do or not do, um that helps us to be healthy or to stay connected to people? Or do we sometimes have maladaptive coping skills, and either like a lack of boundaries, or do we reject people? Just being aware of ourselves is a great first step to becoming healthier and to be more successful in relationships, and to have that true interdependence that is a balance of distance and closeness and dependence and independence, and to have all of that together. So all right, that's pretty much it for today. I'm going to stop sharing here. Thank you so much for being here. I know that was fairly quick, but hope you all enjoy that. And until next time.